My name is Marian Hollis. We're in Cortland, Ohio.
And how old are you, Marian?
90.
And when were you born?
December 29, right after the fall of the stock market.
Okay. Who's your cute little friend next to you?
I haven't met her yet, but she looks like my sister. I used to have a sister, and she was blonde.
She was blonde.
And we had a brother who was blonde and a brother who was black.
Yeah. His hair was black. He wasn't black, right?
Slightly black.
He was very dark, though.
He was very dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark hair and brown eyes.
Yeah.
That came from the O'Loughlin side,
Yeah.
and she came from the Rice.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you want to say your name and when you were born?
Catherine Swan, November 12th, 1931.
Okay. So you guys are almost exactly 2 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I have some questions that maybe you can talk about. I think that probably you'll have some answers that are the same and some that are different. So, where did you live when you were young? Where did you live?
I started out, we were all born in Newcastle, but I started out living on Market Street. We had an apartment in the upstairs of Lottie Oliver's house, my papa and mama and I. And Lottie Oliver was very crazy about us. And I still remember her at the time that she died. We went back and brought her some food and visited her. So we started out East Market, then we lived on Ohio Street, then we lived on Mahoning Avenue.
Where did you live on Mahoning Avenue?
A little bit before the park, before Packard Park,
Okay.
and finally on Seneca Street.
Okay. Now you said some of your memories from when you lived in Lottie Oliver's house. Do you remember any of the other places that you lived?
On Ohio Street, I remember we lived next door to a couple who had Jigs, a bulldog.
Oh, okay.
And then on Mahoning Avenue, I remember people coming from Newcastle to visit us, and my Aunt Alice stayed with us for a while.
Do you remember those earlier places, Mom?
Not all of them, no.
No,
She wasn't there
she wasn't
for
there.
all of them.
No.
When did she arrive on the scene?
Must have been when we were on Ohio Street.
Where's Ohio Street? I don't know where that is.
It's on the west
West
side.
side.
out
Where the
by
dry
Market.
cleaning place was.
Oh,
Out
by
near there.
McMyler?
Pretty close.
Okay. Oh, okay. That makes sense. What was the dry cleaners called?
O'Loughlin.
Oh, Lachlan. And who did he sell it to?
Al Kokrak,
Oh,
and
okay.
he called it Master Cleaners.
Master Cleaners. I remember Master Cleaners.
I want to tell you about, I remember Newcastle, going back to visit them when I was a child, very young, maybe 2 or 3 years old. And I used to play with Uncle George, who was my mother's uncle.
Okay.
Uncle George would sit on the porch with me and always make applesauce, and I would feed him applesauce. He got very tired of applesauce.
Oh, how funny. So it was Graham's family that lived
Yes.
in Newcastle?
Right.
Okay. And where did Pops' family live?
Brookville,
Brookville.
in the mountains.
Also in
They
Pennsylvania.
lived 110 miles away, and it was an all-day trip.
Oh, really?
We only went there a couple times when we were kids.
Now, did Graham and Pops meet in Pennsylvania or did they meet in Ohio?
They met in Newcastle.
Okay.
She was a secretary at City Hall. He was a reporter at the Newcastle News, and his beat was City Hall. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
how they met.
And they were older, right, when they met?
No, well, older than children, but they were out of high school, and he had not gone to the Navy yet, so he was pretty young.
Oh.
But then he went to the Navy for World War I. We came back in 1918, but they didn't get married till 1928.
Did they date during that time?
They wrote. He did live in Newcastle for a while then too.
Okay. They wrote letters to each other.
They wrote letters while he was gone, and then when he came home, then they dated, but they didn't get married.
Really? So how old were they when they got married? Like 30s, right?
Well, Pops was 40 when I was born. So, and that was a year after they were married. And Graham was 4 years younger, I think.
I think so.
So that was pretty old in those days to be starting a family.
Well, he wanted to have money to have a business. And he went to Warren because they didn't have a real dry cleaning establishment.
That was smart. Didn't he have a movie theater or something too?
That was later, though, after he
Oh.
retired.
Oh, okay. That just like a pet project.
It didn't work out so well
No.
because that's exactly when the TV started and they had movies.
Okay. But did you guys work? Didn't you work at the movie theater when you were young?
I did,
You did.
very briefly.
Yeah. You were already gone? Okay. So school for our kids is pretty different right now because they're both doing online school. What do you guys remember about your school days?
First grade, I went to Newcastle because I wasn't old enough to go to St. Mary's in Warren. So over there, it was a double grade, first and second.
Oh.
And I liked that because as soon as I got finished with the work, I could listen to second grade, what they were learning. So I was ahead when I got over here
Yeah.
to go to second grade. But I liked school here. I
Did
think
you like
all
school?
of us did.
Yeah, I liked school. First grade was Sister Pius. It was very nice.
You didn't stay at first, though.
Oh, well, no, I didn't like it at first. I ran home crying every day. And Graham would have to walk me back and then I'd cry some more. Finally, I would part from her. The only kid in first grade who cried more than I did was Billy McCarthy.
What did he cry about?
Well, he cried about having to leave his mother too.
Oh, okay.
But he went home for lunch and then he came back and cried the second time.
Oh my gosh.
But I cried for a long time in first grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you didn't, that didn't
I didn't
bother you?
cry.
You were independent.
Right.
Yeah,
An
she was
independent
very
woman.
independent. In church, the nun had me sit next to her because then I didn't cry as much. And didn't, distract everybody else.
Didn't you?
I was not a silent crier.
Didn't you take the nun's keys and go home?
I did. She gave me her keys to play with, and I left and took them home with me.
How did you get away? Did you say you were going to the bathroom or something? Or you just left?
I don't know how I got away, but I did. I probably did say I had to go to the bathroom, and I just took off. And she sent Mrs. Gilday to get me, bring me back, and I went back.
You guys were right across the street, right?
Yeah,
From
I
the
was
church?
right across
Okay.
the street. So Mrs. Gilday persuaded me to go back to school, which I did.
And you guys, what were some of the, you said you took dancing lessons and piano lessons. What were those like in those days?
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Miss Finney was piano lessons. And
She
Miss-
knitted.
Yes.
While you were playing, she knitted. If you hit
She
a wrong
did it.
note, she stabbed you with the needle.
That's true.
Stabbed you with it?
Yeah.
Did she come to your house or did you guys go to her house?
We went to her house. And
Okay.
she had a huge dog that nobody liked.
Tinker.
Tinker. What's the dog?
Dog's named Tinker.
Tinker was a stinker.
But there were lots of kids there at the same time, and they were all lined up on a bench while you were playing.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't a private lesson.
Interesting. And what about dancing lessons? Where did you go for those?
Mrs. Shoup.
Mrs. Shoup.
She had on Porter Street, wasn't it? Yeah, she had an apartment on the second floor. And that's where the lessons were.
Where was it on Porter Street related to our house?
Beside Mrs. Knox, wasn't it? Just a couple doors down.
Oh, okay. Which one was Mrs. Knox? Where was that house?
A gray house.
It wasn't far. It was
No.
close to the corner, right?
So they had, we had other things besides dancing. We had ballet and arpeggio and.
What's arpeggio?
Something like ballet, but
With the
different kinds of
partners,
moves.
I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And kind of gymnastics and baton twirling, every kind of thing.
Did you guys have a lot of friends in your neighborhood that went to
No.
school with you?
No
No
friends
friends.
from Florine.
Florine
One girl.
Branish.
But mostly we had kids from Elm Road School in our neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
And we played, well, the Greek kids next door, that was a great blessing when they came.
Yeah, right.
And we played baseball with them in the street all the time.
When we weren't fighting,
We did-
when we were fighting, we called them dirty Greeks and they called us dirty Catholics.
All right. Where did you go to college?
Well, I went first to Mercyhurst, which I hated, and I stayed, I guess I
Stayed
stayed
2 years.
2 years, yeah. I wanted to leave after the first year, and my mother talked me into staying another year. I still hated it, she let me change. And I loved Notre Dame.
Oh, okay. And where did
That's where we.
you went to Notre Dame? Okay. Now, how did that? Did you go to college and then go to the convent, or go to the convent and then go to college? How did that work?
After high school, I went to the convent,
Okay.
and then we went to college.
Okay. So was it like in conjunction with being in the convent you went to
Yes.
college? Okay.
It was training for being a teacher.
Okay. And that was what part of your order did?
Yes, right.
Okay. They were teachers. And what did you teach?
Latin, Spanish, and English.
Really? And you could speak all of, well, you can't really speak
Jack of
Latin.
all trades.
Yeah.
Right.
Could you speak Spanish?
Yes.
Really? Where did you learn Spanish and Latin? In school?
I took it in high school and then I took it in college.
Okay. Huh, interesting. And you taught English?
Mm-hmm. That's all I could speak.
You could speak French.
Sort of.
What do you remember about your parents? Were they really involved in your lives, or did they kind of do their own thing? What do you remember about how they were?
They were laissez-faire. They weren't strict in the sense of other kids, I have to be home at 9 o'clock and all this. We never had hours that we had to be home or things that we had jobs to do at home. But
What kind of jobs did you have to do?
scrub the kitchen floor.
That's true.
We had to keep our room clean and scrub the kitchen floor. Those were the regular things.
Oh, that's not too bad. What are your favorite memories from teaching?
Well, in Elyria, that was my favorite place, and I was there for 6 years. And it was a co-ed school, that's what I liked about it. It was really fun. The kids were jovial, and they were country kids.
Oh, okay.
Actually came from the country, many of them. They came on buses, and they came from pretty far around there. And they would do things like, one fellow had a water pistol when it was season, spring, for time for water pistols. But I would check when they came in, check their pockets, and he put his in his sock. Then we got inside, he put it in his pocket, but the pistol leaked. They like things like that.
Oh, that's funny. What about you, Mom? What are some of your favorite memories from teaching?
From teaching, I taught at Monticello Junior High, but I taught 7th and 7th grade, which was a good grade because the 8th graders even then were getting too mouthy, you know. And I remember must have been the first day of school that I went into the classroom, and this one boy stood up and he said, "Miss O'Loughlin, can I tell you something?" And I said, "Certainly." And he said, "You're not much bigger than the rest of us."
Wasn't it kind of a big deal too when you got pregnant? Didn't they not want the kids to know that you were pregnant?
They didn't want them to know, and fortunately I was able to conceal it. She was born in July, and I taught until June, and I never started wearing maternity clothes until May.
Oh, okay.
So I was able to conceal it for a good part of the time. Yeah, they didn't want them to. I was the first one that they had ever let stay after she got pregnant. So I was bent on concealing it too.
Yeah, interesting. So you and Dad started dating when you were teaching, right? Obviously.
Yes.
And what about you, Aunt Marian? When did you and Uncle Louie meet?
Well, by then I was out of the convent and had gone to grad school in Colorado. And so I was working at CPI, Cleveland Psychiatric,
What did you go to grad school for?
to be a psychiatric social worker,
Okay.
master's in social work.
Okay.
And when I was working in Elyria, the psychiatrist there came from Cleveland. He was telling me when he lived in Cleveland, he lived near the Jewish Community Center, and they had all kinds of activities. So when I moved back to Cleveland, I made it a point to live there or in the area of Jewish Community Center, and I used to go there for activities. One Sunday night there was a dance, and Louis came to the dance. It was in the paper, and that's how I met him. He asked me to dance, and then we kept on dancing together. And a Jewish lady came up and asked him, "Would you take me home?" She wanted to break us up, apparently. And he said no. So then we got the idea that we're going to get out of here because they don't want us to dance together. So we left.
Oh, okay.
We went to a restaurant and talked. Made another date.
And then how old were you when you met Uncle Louie?
I was about 38.
Okay. What made you decide to go to graduate school?
Because I didn't want to be a teacher anymore.
Okay. How come?
Well, when I was teaching at the college, we had the opportunity to do a lot of counseling. And I found out that I really liked that better,
Oh, okay.
working on one-on-one
Yeah.
with students, so that's why I wanted to go
You
into
preferred the
counseling.
one-on-one aspect?
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. So how did your life change after you got married?
We used to laugh about that because Louis would be happy to work overtime before we got married, and he wasn't in any rush to do anything else. But after we got married, we always had things to do. We wanted to go places on the weekend. He wasn't available anymore, and the same with me. I didn't have anything to do. I would always go home on the weekends, go back to Warren, but
Oh, okay.
then after we got married, we had plenty of places to go and do and visit.
And you were living in Cleveland at the time, right?
Mhm.
And where did you live in Cleveland?
We bought an apartment house on West Boulevard, right by the lake, across the road from the lake. And we lived there on the 4th floor. We got the best apartment up there where you could see the lake. So we stayed there for 5 years. And after that, we sold that place and moved to California.
And you moved to California because you wanted to be in a better
We were
climate?
tired of shoveling snow,
Yeah?
but we just wanted to try something different.
Yeah. And in California, you lived right on the Sacramento River?
Right. While we were in Cleveland, we had a boat on the lake, but we always ended up going on the river because we liked boating on the river better where there were things going on
Okay.
both sides. And we enjoyed that. So when we went to California, we decided, let's try to get a house on the river, which wasn't too easy. There weren't very many available, but we
Yeah.
got one.
Oh, that's good. Mom, where did you live when you were in Cleveland?
When I was in Cleveland, I lived on, I can't think of the name of the street, but I lived with Mrs. Ketchum. She was a widow, and she had advertised a room for rent. I paid $10 a week for the room,
Ooh.
and I lived with her, and she was not an interfering person at all. You know, I came in, well, I had lived with somebody else before that. I can't even, Mrs. Chomness. And Mrs. Chomness wanted me home at 9 o'clock. Well, that didn't fit with my plans at all. So I didn't stay there very long, and that was when I moved in with Mrs. Ketchum. And she and I got along fine. She was very nice, and I came and went as I pleased. And it was close to school. I could walk to school from her
Oh,
house,
okay.
so that was nice too.
And then when you and Dad got married, where did you live?
When we first got married, we lived up over the restaurant. That's where I met him too, was at the restaurant. And he had a bedroom up over the restaurant. We lived there for a while. And trying to think where
Did he sell the restaurant after you got married, or when did he sell the
No,
restaurant?
he still had the restaurant for a while.
And when did he sell it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I can remember him getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and open the restaurant.
And I remember you telling the story about him coming home smelling like the restaurant
Oh,
after
yes.
you were pregnant, and it
Oh,
made
yeah.
you sick.
Yeah, the smell of it made me sick, that's
Mhm.
right. I guess this means the honeymoon's over.
Oh my. So you guys kind of took different routes in your lives. You had a bunch of kids and raised kids, and Aunt Marian, you guys did more traveling and sightseeing. Do you want to tell us some about some of your travels?
Well, I wrote down the travels because I probably wouldn't remember them well completely. So, Louis and I together went to many places, and then sometimes he would go to Hungary, and I would go somewhere on my own. The first place I went was Europe, and I went with a girlfriend, and we went on Europe on $5 a day, and we went on the trains all through Europe. And after that, I really had a bug for traveling and wanted to see everything else. So Louis and I went, of course, to Hungary on our honeymoon. And then after that, we went to Greece, to South America, China, Mexico, Scandinavia, the Oriental capitals, the Philippines, Indonesia, Amazon, Canada, Alaska, New Zealand, Costa Rica. And by myself, I went to the Holy Land, Russia, Medjugorje, Morocco, African Safari, Britain, Australia, 3 times, and Japan.
Was Australia your favorite?
Australia was one of my favorites. My real favorites were the Amazon and China. But Australia, I went with our friends Jeanette and Randy. And the first time we went, there was an opening trip because a certain airport had opened. So we went down the regular East Coast where all the tourists go. The next time, we went through the middle of the country on a bus trip. And then the third time, we went to the western coast and saw where they have the boat races and so on.
Oh, nice.
So we got to see all of Australia.
Wow, yeah. And did you guys travel together?
We went to some places together.
Yeah, not too many.
We went to Hungary and
Yeah.
Alaska and all through California.
Mhm.
Didn't you go to, I thought you went to Lake Tahoe one time too. Did
That
you
was
do
part of our
Lake Tahoe?
California trip.
Yeah, okay. What did you like about China?
The first time, it was definitely communistic and backward, and everybody wore those gray-green clothes, and there were no cars on the street except from the officials. Everybody rode bicycles. It was strictly communistic. We would meet people and they wanted to talk to us, but they were afraid. And one time we met a young man who said he wanted to talk to us, and we asked him to come back to our hotel room because it was cold, it was December. So we started in toward the hotel, and when we got to the lobby, they wouldn't let him in because they didn't want them to hear about our way of life
Oh, okay.
and how the things were better in the West, because that wasn't their line.
Oh, interesting.
But later on, then when we went back the second time, things were better, much better, and they were allowed to do much more. The cities were built up. They were getting ready for the Olympics at that time, but it was very communistic still. And people would ask us, did you see any churches open? But we didn't.
Really? Well, you didn't even really have phones when you were young. So what do you think of What do you think of today's generation and the cell phones and the social media?
We had regular telephones and we thought that was wonderful.
We had one phone on Tunica Street, and it was in all places in Pops's office, of course. And so if you got a phone call or made a phone call, you were standing right beside his desk, and he was sitting at the desk. So if someone said, "I love you," you say, "Me too."
Oh, that's funny. So no hot and heavy phone conversations.
No.
So what do you think of kids today always with their devices in their hands?
I think it's a little ridiculous, really, that you can't even go to the store without your phone in your hand. I wouldn't want to be that attached to a phone, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of benefits to it, but sometimes they're rude. At a table, for instance, you find them with their family, but they're isolating themselves.
And what do you think? What do you think is different about parents today versus your parents' generation and your generation?
Well, they have to be a lot more watchful because there was no problem with our time. We could walk to Packard Park or walk anywhere. We hardly ever took buses. We mostly had to walk. And other kids that lived in the suburbs either took buses or their parents had to take them somewhere, but we went everywhere on our own. We even went to Cleveland on the train.
Really?
Youngstown on the bus. We traveled around on our own.
Yeah. I think that's a difference maybe too between kids that live in a city versus kids that live in suburbs, because even now, like, you read stories about kids that live in New York City and their parents let them go on the subway to different places by themselves, and people who don't grow up in cities don't really understand that. Do you think that was part of it?
Probably they have to go to school on the subway in the first place, so
Yeah.
they're used to that.
And your parents too were older, so maybe they were more,
I don't think that they were confining, do you?
No.
so they let you be independent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you guys grew up with what's called the greatest generation. Do you believe that was the greatest generation?
I don't know about the people, but the times were the greatest, I think, in the sense that things were safe and you could save money. And I remember Pop saying that he didn't want to pay into Social Security because he thought he could manage his money better than the government could. And people really did try to save money and they were responsible and expected to take care of themselves. It was great because of the opportunities that we had. All the guys that went to the war came home and got an education, and all of them had a career.
Yeah.
Which would be very hard now.
Right. How did the Depression affect you?
We didn't know. We were
You didn't
little kids.
Okay.
I remember people saying that their fathers followed the coal trucks or the ice truck to pick up things that fell off, or the trains. I remember asking my mother, why didn't we have this or that, and she'd say we didn't have any money. But we didn't know it was a depression.
So it didn't affect your day-to-day life?
No,
No.
we don't know any better.
No.
You know, Aunt Jenny and people like that, they thought it was hard because they couldn't get all the things that they used to get. But we never knew any better.
Yeah. What kind of things?
Well, coffee,
Okay.
all the things that,
Sugar.
butter. I remember mixing oleo with yellow coloring.
Grandma used to do that to try to fool us. She'd mix the oleo and even shape it like the butter, but we knew the difference.
So do you think that it was easier for you to deal with the pandemic and the quarantine, having come from a different generation than it was for people who were used to being out and about and super connected to everyone else?
Yes, probably much easier, but also we're older and we wouldn't be doing that much anyway, so for us, it's not that effective,
Yeah. So you didn't struggle that much?
no. But I see now that people, if they're asked to quarantine or to go back to that, there's no way, you know, we already did that, we're not doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we would say, well, it's necessary. They're not doing it again.
You mean younger generations are, they're not?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. What kind of advice do you have for today's generation?
Now, you know, that's a good one because the kids from Kennedy came to talk to us once, and they wanted to know what advice we had. And my advice, I wrote down at the time. First, relax in your dealings with others. Don't insist on being right all the time. That causes a lot of trouble. You see families that are broken up completely, never speak to each other because they had an argument and nobody would give in. Second, find a mentor, preferably somebody in your own area of work. Find an older person that can be your advisor. Third, establish a system for savings. Fourth, keep your head about you. And this is the one to remember. We hear of college young men and women on their own for the first time who let one bad choice ruin their reputation and their lives. Remember Judge Kavanaugh. I'm not saying he made the wrong choice because we don't know, but everybody will always wonder, and he certainly had a lot of trouble because of that choice that he made. So think about that when you have a choice to make.
Is there anything else that you wanna talk about or that you wanna add?
You have anything to add? How about advice? Do you have any advice for young people?
How about for young mothers? Do you have any advice for young mothers?
Young mothers. Yes, well, I guess I would say, enjoy them while they're little. I mean, they can be a real pain in the neck, but.
They're gonna grow to be a big pain in the neck.
But those are the times you're going to remember because you've had them there right under your thumb, so to speak.
I'm still right here under your thumb. Except now you're under my thumb.
That's about it, I guess.
What about marriage advice? You were married for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Any marriage advice?
Well, I would say, if there are things that you don't like about them before you're married, take a good hard look at them because they're not going to change.
That's smart.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Aunt Marian? Any marriage advice?
That's very good advice, I think. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to change either, so
Right.
that's what you're buying.
Right. Okay, well, this was wonderful. Thank you guys for answering all these questions and for taking the time to talk about your lives a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.